Hello and welcome to Japan Expert Insights and our Wednesday morning room with Tim Sullivan and me, Maya Matsuoka, as your hosts and moderators. In this podcast, we welcome comments, questions, and opinions. So if you haven't done so yet, join us next time on Clubhouse. In the meantime, you can find us at japanexpertinsights.com and our YouTube channel, where we upload all the conversations on Japanese politics, business insights, and Japan's role in the Indo-Pacific region. Good morning to everybody who is here. We're getting some more people later. It's Wednesday morning in Japan. Thank you for joining us. And today we're going to talk about the importance of building business relationships in Japan. And we all are aware that building relationships in general is important, not only in Japan, but in other parts of the world, equally important maybe. But since we have all been related to Japan, and we know that the culture is really tightly knit, and people here do enjoy getting to know you first before they can trust you. We thought that this today's topic is something we can really have a discussion about. So without any further ado, actually, I would like to open the room to Tim because he has a couple of stories. Later, I have my own stories as well. Yuka, if you have yours, you're very welcome to tell them to us. But if not, I cannot wait to hear your comments and questions as well. So, Tim, the floor is yours.
Okay, and I would only add that anyone in the audience who wants to share their stories, I would love to hear them because that's what makes the room interesting. I'm just going to, tell it through my lens. And as I always remind people, I was in the Japanese manufacturing bubble. It doesn't represent the rest of Japanese industry. It certainly doesn't represent what probably most of you who work in the white collar world see, because it's just a different world, right? So in that context, early 90s, I get hired after working for Japanese my whole life and living in Japan for 10 years. I wanted to learn about American business culture, so I started sending resumes to American companies, and I got hired by one, and they hired me in customer service / sales. And I had never worked in sales. It was always more operations, but, it was new. So I took the job. And my mission was to develop business with Japanese subsidiaries who had set up companies in mostly the Midwest and the South, and most of them were automotive parts suppliers. So they gave me a budget. They gave me time. It was privately owned, and they knew, I let them know up front, it'll take at least a few years to get work. We have to win their trust. And they gave me a budget, and as fate would have it, the Chicago Bulls and Michael Jordan were setting the world on fire. I had a budget, and I'm taking these guys, prospective customers, to Bulls games. I'm not going to say who it was with the customer, but I just got to know them early on, and I developed a relationship. And this was after they gave me business, right? And so we were making a prototype part for them. Many of you may know what a bobbin coil is. Think of a spool, right? It's a spool, and you wind copper wire around it. So this was a new design, and the design was intended to maximize the winds. And the best way to do that is if you could somehow guide it in with grooves where it would wind evenly, you would actually get more winds and a better quality product. So that was the idea, but they had never done this before, and we got the job and we developed it. So anyway, we decided also out of goodwill that myself and the chairman of this company, who just absolutely loved Japan, would go and witness these winding trials at their manufacturing facility in the U.S. Now, these were prototype parts, right? So we planned the trip. The chairman, myself, he brought his wife, and I brought my whole family, and the engineer in charge of the project. So a couple of weeks before we were scheduled to leave for Japan, I called one of my friends, Japanese guy, back channels, and I said, I don't want our chairman to lose face if those winding trials are a failure. So I said, could you do me a favor? I'll send you a box of these bobbins. Can you sneak him in the line and just kind of see if it works? So we're literally, the day we're walking out the door to O'Hare Airport to leave, I get a call from my friend, my Japanese buddy. And he goes, Tim, they failed. and we were going like 10 days early, the chairman and I, because we were going to do some travel. So we had some time now. And I said to the engineer, you're staying. You got to figure out what we did wrong. Because it was random winding. not even winding. You got to figure out what we did wrong. You got to fix the problem, and you got to communicate everything to me. I'm going to put it in Japanese with an apology and tell them what we're doing. So that's what we did. And literally the day of the trials, the engineer, that's the day he flew in. And somehow he figured out how to get from Narita to where we were way out in the boonies, like hours away. And he figured it out. And he walks in. Somebody grabs that box of bobbins. They quickly usher it out of the room. And for the next 20, 30 minutes, we chatted with the vice president of operations. This is a big Japanese company. We chatted with him. And then the guy comes back in who had left with the box, whispers something in his ear. He grins ear to ear. And he says, and by the way, I was interpreting, but he says, I'm so happy to tell you the parts wound perfectly. And then he said, I want you to know that all our suppliers make mistakes, all of them. And we determine the good suppliers based on how they deal with these mistakes. And you have proven to us that you're the kind of supplier we want to work with. So it was a big victory. They took us out to dinner that night. We had a blast, right? But if I had not had that relationship and had not taken action to anticipate possible disasters, that would have been a disaster if we had done that. So that's my story. Questions, comments, or, Maya, would you like to tell your story?
Yes, Tim, as you mentioned in the very beginning, yes, we have different experiences because you come from, an experience in manufacturing. And my experience was never there. It was more in the white collar world. So I worked for, an association that represents the travel and tourism industry here. And one of the stories I have to tell about building relationships is, of course, related to this experience. And it happened a couple of years ago. And, it was when the travel industry was still experiencing a kind of crisis. And then the number of outbound travelers from Japan was on the decrease still. And if you don't know, basically, nowadays when you say travel and tourism in Japan, everybody imagines the hordes of inbound visitors, foreigners who come to visit the country. But long before Japan was a destination for foreign visitors, it was actually a source market for a lot of destinations in the world. A source market for Hawaii, the United States mainland, also Europe, and some other places. And most of the travel agencies you know the names of, like JTB and Kinki Nippon Tourist, they actually started their second biggest business was outbound travel for Japanese tourists. And so that was the beginning. And when the population started to age, and the demographics actually shifted and the fewer people started going overseas, the travel and tourism industry, was in that kind of crisis. So we were trying actually to help our member companies to go back, to regain the number of travelers, overseas travelers they had. And one of the projects we were considering running actually was a hashtag campaign, so that we could actually run, include all our member companies and also partners like national tourism organizations here in Japan. And in order to run that hashtag campaign, we needed to use a software developed by a company here. Basically the company developed it overseas, of course, but they had a Japanese branch. And at that time, that was still a very new thing. And I contacted the company, got their quote, that's the quote, yes, the price estimate and so on. And when I presented this, to the bucho, what happened was that, the bucho said, we cannot go to that company directly because it's a new one and we have had no relationships with it before. So what we're going to do, we're going to contact one of our partners, the media partners, advertising agencies we have worked with for quite a while, and ask them to do it for us. And so what happened, of course, we contacted that agency, and we told them that we wanted to run a hashtag campaign and we wanted them to help us with that. But needless to say, that company didn't have the necessary software, so they did, some research online, obviously, and they found exactly the same company that had developed the hashtag software. And they gave us, the advertising agency, our partner, actually decided to use that same company, and they gave us a quote. And that quote, of course, had we had to pay an additional, additionally, so that because we were using actually one more subsidiary on the way. The channel, the communication channel was longer. And then my point is that basically, of course, the association I was working for was happy to pay that additional, the additional price. And the thing is that we were happy to pay it because it would give us a peace of mind, and we didn't have to develop a new relationship actually with that new company. We went through an advertising agency that we trusted, and we knew that if there was some problem, they would solve the problem for us, and it would also, of course, decrease the amount of potential trouble. So this is my story, and sometimes, of course, as you can you can conclude, there are upsides and there are downsides of using partnerships that you already have established. And of course, sometimes it's more expensive, sometimes it makes things take longer. But at the end of the day, I think that here in Japan, people love to do this because, once they have established that relationship of trust, it makes things much more easier for them in the short term and also in the long term. But I don't know if this sounds familiar to you, to everybody who is in the audience, or Tim to you, or Yuka to you.
It applies in automotive. There are times that it works against efficiency. So that's the downside, and it is very real, right? But there's upsides. It's really hard to get in the door, but once you're in, they don't want to cut you. And before they cut you, they might send an army of engineers into your plant to help you fix it, depending on who your customer is, right? But one particular company did that, right? Yeah. And I would call that an upside. Like, they don't tolerate poor performance. They go help you fix it. Not always, but that's one upside that I saw. But you're right. Those, sometimes to a fault, the loyalty of old relationships, blocks progress, and also, like as you said, it can be costly. How about you, Yuka? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, actually, I really enjoy listening to you guys' story. And then, before sort of, touching on the content of your stories and topic, I like to sort of, sort of express my gratitude because I just happened to listen to very similar discussion, different room. And then I gotta make sure she's not here. She is a consultant. She actually sort of, consult Japanese clients who are trying to enter U.S. markets, and they, having a hard time. And sort of, so she advised them how to sort of conduct even the business presentation. And, but she just went on and on and on, and very abstract, like she repeated, yes, for Japanese businesses, the building relationship, long-term relationship, it may take a while, but it's critical. And then US, like for the business presentation, you have to hit the high point. But she just didn't give us any the concrete detailed example. And me, I get like, okay. So I said, would you give us like, this example that you can share with us, almost like a case study that, thanks to your advice, there are some successful case that if you could share with us. And then she didn't have much to share. But so you guys' story sort of, was really hitting home with me. So going back to Tim's, your story. So this case, your success story, right? Last time you shared with us, the American boss, had issues with her Japanese subordinates, and then how you advise her to sort of fix the relationship. Well, fix may not be a good word, but sort of rebuild the relationship. But for this one, it's a success story. And then what would you say the key point of your success? if you could repeat.
Well, you have to have support, right? So my fear originally of working for an American company is the short-term orientation, right? And so when I went on interviews, I was like really upfront. And this was one interview to me was when I joined this company, I didn't think they'd hire me. And because I thought another company was going to hire me, which they didn't, anyway, so I went in with a, devil may care attitude. And I just said, look, I mean, I would love to help you, but everybody has to know I have to build relationships and it's a long-term process. And I'm not going to get a purchase order in 6 months or even a year. I have to build these relationships from zero. So I was and they agreed. They were privately owned. It was a family-owned company, right? They agreed. So that provided me the freedom to take they gave me the budget too. They encouraged me to spend money. And so that's what I did. And even before I got business, I would go to Detroit once a month just to meet this guy, but I wouldn't tell him. I go, hey, I'm in town on business. Let's meet for lunch. And over a 2-year period, I got to know him. He was a top dog in purchasing, a Japanese guy. And finally, almost 2 years into it, he sent me a request for quotation. And when he was rooting for me, but I had targets, right, and quality issues. But he was rooting for me, so that gave me a little bit of an edge over my competitor, right? And so they gave me the breathing room and the budget to do it. I was taking these, again, I mentioned, I was getting like really good seats to Bulls games. I took them to hockey games. I just went out with them and I got to know them. And they're all good guys, and they felt that they could trust me. And so I got the job. And in this situation, I guess the success was driven by my relationship with this Japanese counterpart who was in Japan, his willingness to help me sneak it in, and my paranoia about the chairman being embarrassed. So in this case specifically, I guess I attribute it to that, and having a great customer, right, to cooperate
I
with.
mean, isn't that ideal situation that, I mean, your company, your employer was patient and then understood how long and what takes to get the business lead from Japanese customers. And then, I mean, like Japanese customers are rooting for you. I mean, isn't that a great, situation? I mean, it's all your effort though. I mean, by the way, I have to ask this question. Throwing those ball game tickets, how critical was that? I mean, like Chicago Bulls, and was that a very effective way to entice Japanese customers?
That was only one of many ways, but this was all,
Okay.
yeah, I mean, this was all dumb luck too, right? And I just remember, okay, so the first time I took them, I was going to drive them downtown. We were going to go to the game. I was going to drive them back to their hotel room. Well, it started snowing. So the president of my company, again, he's an American. He goes, Tim, I don't want you driving. He goes, rent a limo. And he goes, and stock it with, alcohol. so so I took these guys to a Bulls game in a limo. Everybody thought we were like really important. And I had like third row from the court seats. These were not cheap tickets. They were pretty expensive. And after the game, the guy who helped me in Japan, was just gushing. I got to see Jordan, Pippen, and Rodman. Oh my God. Like he was so happy. They had so much fun, right? So did that? No. I mean, the thing was building the relationship of trust, right? Doing things along the way. So I'll give you an example. When they sent me the request for quotation, I go to my boss. He goes, okay, Tim, don't just give them a quotation. We have to blow them out of the water. So let's do something really different and unique. And so he said, this was called at the time stereolithography. It's like we call it 3D printing, but it was a more primitive version of it. But it was leading edge at the time, right? So we did a 3D, of the bobbin coil. We actually did a 3D and printed it. And he goes, and don't fax it to him, the quote. He goes, hand carry it in and hand it to him. And so I did that, and they were so blown away that we did the plus alpha. Again, this is my boss and I. My boss was super smart, right? And he wasn't a Japan guy, but I had educated him and the chairman enough where they understood, right? And they were open to it. So,
Wait, you mean you hand delivered your quote?
with a 3D sample of the bobbin based on the drawings that they gave us, right?
Oh.
And not only did I give them a quote, I said, but if you change the design, and I knew they wouldn't. I just wanted to show them the effort. I said, if you modify this dimension, we can knock off 3 cents. You know what I mean? Like I knew they'd reject it, but they were like, oh, he's trying, you know? So I just wanted to find different ways to stand out because I know my competitors, they just fashed in a quote, right? No clue how to do it. So I was really lucky that I worked for this company. They were fun. It was a fun company.
I mean, I think like you did a good homework, and then like I think it's a great story all around. That your employer was great, and the customers appreciated you, and you did your footwork. You took time and efforts. I think it's a great story. And Maya, maybe you like to you like to sort of explain more details that what was the high point of your success story besides having a partner?
Yeah, I think that the high point was eventually that everybody in the office, was sure that we are not going to get any more work, or we weren't going to have to deal with any, potential trouble on the way, because that was something absolutely new for us. I mean, the hashtag campaign, right? Nobody, I mean, when I first started talking about it, almost everybody in the office was like, what is a hashtag? And so it comes to say, to show that, I mean, the average age of the people in the office was quite high at that point anyway. But yeah, it's like when people do new things here, they prefer to have somebody who can guarantee that there will be no failure. Or if there is anything, potential, threat, that it will be dealt with in a proper manner by somebody who knows how to do that. So I think that's the peace of mind, the elimination of potential trouble was really important for us.
Oh no, that's a great point that you just stated. Everybody, before initiating anything new, we all want some sort of guarantee, right? But anything in the future, even if you think that 99% guaranteed, success guaranteed, something can happen. So how did you handle that though? I mean, you cannot guarantee 100%, right? What did you do to sort of convince those people who tend to be on the older side to take the very first step?
Well, that was exactly, I mean, we actually didn't go directly to the company that owned the software. We didn't run the project by ourselves, and so we actually, we went through an advertising agency. And that advertising agency was, the buffer we needed, or the cushion we thought that, which could actually soften the fall if there was any kind of failure at that point. And that advertising agency, it had been a partner for us for quite some time. So we knew that whatever happened, they would be able to, to deal with it. And actually, there wouldn't be any serious repercussions to our work.
Okay, cool. So yeah, so I think it's important to have a great partner that you can trust, I guess.
Yes, but I have also one more story, and it's really, how can I put it? It comes to show how also, or it ties up to the point that Tim made, that you need to develop the relationships here first before you can do anything meaningful. So another thing, we had somebody who came from a small Eastern European country, and he came as a representative of their national tourism organization, which is the equivalent of the Japanese JNTO. And he actually his origin was half Japanese, half another nationality. His native country, So, and when he came, he actually he had a very tiny office. It was just him and one more person, a Japanese employer, and they did such a great job because they knew that they had to develop that network, and they started developing it. And at the end of the day, it took them about between 2 and 3 years actually to develop it. And when they started after that, when they began working, really developing their projects, so they made such a great hit that the Japanese visitors to that country, they grew from 8,000 per year to 150,000 per year in the course of maybe 6 or 7 years, which is a great achievement, because that destination wasn't anywhere, on the radar of the Japanese outbound travelers or the outbound travel industry. And so it was so great to see how those two people, they developed the relationships, they developed the network, and then they made a success out of it. And then a couple of years later, it was so, I mean, like, Okay, anyway, so another person from a different Eastern European country representing their national tourism organization came to us, and he said, he was like, why don't you do anything for us? You represent the Japanese outbound travel industry. Why don't you do anything, for us? You just sit, here and do nothing. And I was like, well, we cannot do anything because we don't have any budget and we cannot promote any country. But if you actually start doing something for yourself and for your country, we can help you, not financially, but we can help you, develop your network here. And I gave him the example of, that's Croatia anyway, the country I was talking about earlier, and how hard those two people worked and what they achieved. And then the other guy said, don't give me that example. It's just an exception. And then at that point, I just stopped, talking about anything, because people, they really very easily dismiss the experiences and the know-how that they can get from others here. And it's so that guy, the new guy actually, who was like, you're not doing anything for us. Well, at the end of the day, he never ever tried to develop those relationships and, the business to business network. So nothing happened, actually. That country is still a very, very tiny dot on the radar, of the Japanese travel agencies and the Japanese overseas travelers. And the moral, or that, the thing I want to just, focus on here is that relationships are important everywhere. Business relationships are important everywhere. But there are people who realize that and people who don't. And I guess that, the better you are informed and the sooner you embrace that reality that you need to develop your network by yourself when you come to Japan in order to be successful, the sooner you accept that reality, the sooner you can actually start building your business, or I would say that the sooner you actually achieve real business results.
Actually, I love the story, the way you said it, Maya, because first you gave us, the success story, and to contrast, you gave us a not so successful story. And then while you're talking, I was just remembering, the last time we had this similar discussion in this room, Timothy gave us this, introduced us this great book, the leadership and then deception. Actually, Timothy, that book is so great. I'm actually reading a prequel to that book, which is called Anatomy of Peace. So the book is saying, exactly what you just said, Maya. The people tend to blame others. If something goes wrong, and then not too many people can realize, this, hard situation, have I contributed to this it's challenging situation somehow. But typically we all goes, I'm trying so hard. And they just look around, who's not pitching in? That kind of thing. So that was a great story. And especially I love the contrast of, the successful countries and then the other country. So thank you.
No, I'm so glad to hear that you read both books and enjoyed them. You described it very accurately. Another piece that I got out of the book is how do you, the premise is you can't change anyone. You can't force anyone to change. The best you can do within your control is you can invite them to change. And the way you frame and structure that invitation, might give you a better chance to get them to accept that invitation. But in the end, you can't force them to do it. They have to, all you can do is give them the invitation and do it strategically. And I read that book originally. I may have mentioned this in the last one, but originally I read it because I was asked to develop a leadership training program for one of my clients, or to weave it into my program. So I was reading it for that, and I read it, and it just, how would I say, it made me reflect. And the technique that is displayed is, rather than telling someone this is what you are doing wrong, even if you believe it's true, you're going to push them in a box. They're going to be defensive, and now you've lost them, right? And the example in the book is, rather than telling someone what they did wrong, this person, this leader, is telling stories about his own failures. And his remorse and his reflection and what he did and how it helped him, he's not talking about the other guy. He's just telling that guy stories of his lessons in life, which influences that guy to reflect himself. And that, just like that book, it really made me reflect on my own behavior. And I think I was good for me. It was a really good book for me. And I don't say that about many books. Very few.
I mean, I have no plan of becoming a leader, but like you said, this book is very well written because, like I was saying, it's reads like a story. It's almost like a personal anecdotes, and we can all relate. That's why it's easily we can absorb, and like you said, we can reflect on it, and then you can take the discipline or concept that you learn from this book to any relationship, the family and the friends. That's what the book is so great about. But enough about book. Anyway, and then I'm trying to share it with you guys and my experience, but I just cannot come up with the any personal story. That's why I'm just relying on the books. But anyway, yeah, let me think more about that. If you can, if anybody listening to us, if we can all share with us, that would be super.
And about the relationships, one thing I mentioned to Maya, because I think, as Maya said, relationships are important in all cultures, right? And the really, really good salesmen, I'm talking about American salesmen that I worked with, and they were all better than me. They were like really into relationships. They understood, but that's what set them apart. It's almost like in Japan, it's common sense that that's the reality. In America, I found that savvy people knew it and practiced it, and successful people. However, I also felt that in the business world, they tended to be a little bit more transactional than what I'm used to here in Japan. And I'm not saying it's not transactional in Japan, but I think there might be degrees on a spectrum of how transactional it is. And I also feel that some people played the long game, but there was a limit on, how long they'll wait for a relationship to yield fruit, to yield something. Those are my observations. And I'm not dissing my own culture. I just think that's how it is. Maybe. And maybe, feel free to.
We all live in a very competitive, era, right? Yeah, so the lady consultant I referred to earlier, yeah, so she said, for Japanese company before the presentation, she has to, and then either it can be good or bad, but Japanese companies presentation start with company's history, the management experience, and explaining who they are. But she said she has to sort of she has to advise them to remove all that and then get to the product. Just then what is a product, what product can do, then what kind of product, what kind of problem this product can solve, and how soon, and at what cost. She said American businesses, they focus on that. And again, I cannot decide which is more good for the long run. Your take, Timothy and Maya?
Yeah, I think it looks like you said, it's more of a product focused relationship than a relationship oriented. I don't know if I said that right, but yeah. But I laughed when you said that, because when I was in sales, I did the opposite. Like, I changed my American company's presentation to fit the model you mentioned, company history, because when they saw that we had a history, and they saw that the chairman was one of the founders, and they saw that the chairman wanted to be involved, it made them interested in us. And I was making it in their format, and I did it in English, but I also did a takeaway in Japanese, right, that they could follow along. And so it's just funny. I found it amusing because I reverse engineered it the other way, right?
Yeah, yes. And I think that you guys, you say we live in a very competitive environment, and nowadays focusing just on the product, what the product is not going to work really. But then again, I think that from here we will probably get into the field of marketing, and still, once again, nowadays it's really difficult to talk about marketing as just some frameworks and ways of doing business without once again factoring in the importance of these relationships, because they're one of the channels actually you use in your business model to reach your your partners, your customers, and developing them, actually, these relationships. You have to develop them not only with your business partners, but your customers as well. So I think that these things, they just make or break your business. And yeah, we're way beyond, the pure technical execution of whatever marketing strategies, and we are much more into the emotional side of things nowadays. And of course, yes, I don't want to, just diverge too much from the topic, but yeah, marketing nowadays includes a lot of business relationship development and maintenance.
Oh,
Hello, Hiroko.
Oh,
Hello,
welcome, Hiroko.
Mara-san.
Thank you.
Hello. I just wanted to come up on the stage and comment on what Yuka-san just told us about her experience with that her consultant. We just had a visit from that people from UK, and they are not our partner, but maybe I could say they are a potential, our future customer. But what our boss told me to do is to first take them to that our museum or the facility that have all the our history stuff. So first, it's important for them to learn about our history and the company and the culture and the management philosophy, rather than what we provide or what kind of products or service we provide. So he believes it's important that before we talk about our product and service or our system, he believes that it's critical for our customers or potential customers to understand that our culture, and that's because it's a fundamental for us to be what we are now and what we do in the market. So we have a very opposite approach, and I found it very interesting. Thank you.
And I don't know, does that, like, what's the cultural meaning of that? Is that typical, or did
It's
it surprise you?
very no. The Yuka-san said that before, she shared that it's very opposite approach from her consultant. So I think
Understood.
I think it's. I think both way. I can say which way is better, but I think that's our culture, my company's culture, and our management philosophy is very unique. So based on that philosophy, we do business. So that's why that my boss told me that it's important for them to first understand our culture and the management philosophy before we introduce our products or service.
yeah, that's very interesting because it shows it's no one way is correct for all the occasions. And can I ask you though, Hiroko-san, is that I'm sorry, I might have missed it. So you said your client is UK based, and then your employer is no.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, they are not client yet. Maybe they are lead.
Prospect. Okay.
Yeah, prospect potential. But
okay, but your employer is Japanese company or?
Yes, very Japanese company.
Okay.
I would say.
And then also there might be a difference in the US and the UK approach. I'm not too familiar with the UK, so I believe European may be a little more patient than US counterparts. That's just my impression. But
we already have a lot of relationship with the partners in the US, so yeah, like you said, they are very different. But we only have a partnership relationship with the company who understand that our culture, which is very unique, but I don't want to talk about it because you can easily identify my company, so I can't speak in the details. But
thank you for coming up. Of course, I invite everybody else who is in the room to come up and share your experiences here if you have time to do this, or if you can speak, if you are in a place which allows you to speak. So yeah, okay, we've got one more person.
Hirori, welcome.
Yep. Thank you very much. Okay, Yuka and Hiroko, I believe the difference of the culture is not only the culture, but the construction of the language, grammatical point of view. Maya or sorry, I can't, Tim, Japanese language is very complex and far from European languages. European languages is almost unique and word is different, but the construction are the same. But, Japanese, we have to confirm everything. Suddenly the talking is turned into the negative or positive. So that this is a problem, that attitude towards the incident. So you can say that Japanese presentation started in history, but in the US side or overseas, if they don't have an interested, they have to stop or the meeting is stopped. So like an elevator pitch. So that Yuka and Hiroko say that Japanese studying historical and Japanese listener always listen to everything and make a decision. But the US side, if no interested, that's end. That's my thought.
That's a great observation, Hidori. It made me laugh. I think it's spot on. Selective listening. I agree with you. I think those are all good points. You're right. If the audience doesn't want to listen to it, then you have to be strategic and either, like you said, get rid of it, or somehow figure out a way to make it interesting. One or the other. Those are your choices. Otherwise, like you said, get rid of it. So I'm with you on that. I thank you for that point of view. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Very much so. And I love the point you made about the grammar and how, well, it's not just culture, but also the language itself, the structure of the language. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think it's a great point because I believe, the language sort of like, the form culture and then vice versa. So like a culture can influence language. So yeah, so if you are, immersed into the one culture all the time and then switching to a different culture under the different language system, it will sort of influence the way that you form your thought. And then, and then if you're thinking something and the expression is influenced by your thought. So yeah, it's a very interesting point. So thank you.
I would like to.
I just, sorry.
No, go ahead, Hiroko.
Oh, thank you. I think Hirori-san's point is great, but I think that the language is a part of culture. So when I said culture, it includes the language as well. I just wanted to mention that. Thank you.
That makes perfect sense, Hiroko, and we understood that, I think, most of us. So I have a comment, and I want to get a reaction from the Japanese folks, especially. So personally, if I have a choice of putting a request for like a favor from a Japanese, even a Japanese friend, and I either write it to him, assuming it's a good friend, or I can go face to face. I would prefer going face to face because I feel there's a huge difference in the information I get. Of course, it's true in all cases, but I think especially in Japan, it's easier to verbally, ask a friend for a favor or some kind of help if you're in person than if I have to do it in writing. Is that just me, the gaijin, or do Japanese have a similar preference?
I think it's universal because I think in general, if you're making a request in person, it's hard to say no, right?
I agree with you. I'm thinking more in degrees. Like
Degrees,
even with Americans, even with Americans, I would prefer to do it in person for sure. But I feel like I'll get more information out of Americans via writing, not as much as if I meet them in person. But I think I'll get more necessary information from a response in writing than I will with the Japanese.
Wait, but then the earlier that you said that you took you brought your quote in person, hand delivered, right?
Right.
Isn't that part of the the same difference? No, I mean it's like
yes, but my customer welcomed it. If it had been an American company, they'd say, no, just mail it in. We don't have time for that.
okay.
I think most of the ones I dealt with would have said that.
So Japanese would more like appreciate the effort to go behind this quote. Okay. Interesting.
Plus, they knew me by then. I had lunch with him every month for 2 years. So
that's a long time, by the way. That's many lunch. Okay.
Yes, thank you for that. Anybody else who can comment on this question by Tim?
Wait. So define that to me again. So to Americans, you would just send the written request.
There's less a gap between communicating and writing versus there's a gap. Okay, there is a gap, but I think there's a smaller gap, and I think there's a bigger gap writing in Japanese and getting an answer. Because even as Hirori said, the structure of the Japanese language, the negation comes at the end of the sentence. So theoretically, you have a choice to make a sentence negative or positive.
Right.
If you choose to, look at the body language you're getting from the other person, and you say, I better not rock this boat, so I'll make it negative or positive or whatever, right? Reading the air, there's just so many unwritten things, and I just feel like Japan, there's more information. There's just a bigger gap between getting information written versus in person, in my opinion. And the combination is the best,
you're right. I prefer to receive a request or a question in writing because I think that will remove some sort of misunderstanding. But that may be me.
If you're a direct person who gets to the point, then yes.
Oh, that's me.
Okay. Right. And I think that's great. So then writing with you, and actually you and I, we text back and forth. Come to think of it, I feel like we get a lot of good exchange of information, right?
Right.
But but that's a little different, I feel like, than what I'm talking about. But anyway, maybe I'm just barking up a weird tree. Who knows?
No, that's a great point, though. I guess it depends on the situation, depends on the people. Yeah.
Yes, it does indeed. And I believe that there is a lot to talk about this too. So we can take the conversation, the discussion into this direction at another point, a different day, because it's almost 9 o'clock and this is the time when we wrap up the room and say goodbye. Well, thank you very much, Tim, Yuka. Thank you very much, Hiroko and Hirori, for joining us here and sharing
Thank you.
Your observations. So, this is all for today, and we'll continue again next week on Wednesday, 8 o'clock in the morning. So join us at that time again. And today, have a great day and a very productive and enjoyable remainder of the week. So see you. Bye. Thank you for tuning in today. We will be on air next week on Wednesday at 8 a.m. Japan time again. So join us. Until then, you can find us at japanexpertinsights.com and our YouTube channel. If you want to stay informed about our upcoming events, follow us on Clubhouse, LinkedIn, or Twitter. Again, we are looking forward to your joining us next week. Until then, stay well and make the best of the day. See you!